And we are live. Woo-hoo! Last week, the crew dusted off their tuxes for the first edition of the IDP Roddy Awards. Tonight, we are back all dressed up and ready for the other side of the ball, the offense. Find out our favorite sleepers, stashes, and bust tonight on the Rod Pod. It's time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is Rider Dynasty Podcast. With me tonight are my co-hosts, Joe Harlow. And for tonight's very special episode, we would like to welcome back the one, the only, DeBrickashaw Teague. How you doing, buddy?
Good one there.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, tonight on the show, we will present our preseason offensive awards to a few very deserving players. But before we do, a word from our sponsors. We're not just a bunch of pretty faces here at IDP Plus. We have an entire suite of tools and rankings for both offense and defense. Plus, we have rookie rankings, injury trackers, snap tools, premium articles, and more. Right now, get your first month for just $1 with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. Head over to idpguys.org after the show to get ahead of your lazy league mates on the march towards fantasy football greatness with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. The link and details are in the show description. Gentlemen, tonight are the Offensive Roddy Awards, where the Rod Pod honors the offensive players who will make us laugh, cry, and cheer this year. I will be your host this week, and I would like to introduce our first award of the night, which is the Sidney Sweeney Award for the biggest bust of the season. The award is for players ranked by fantasy pros in the top 3 tiers who are going to let us down this year. To present our first nominee is Sean.
Wow, I didn't know I was going first. So I'm going to nominate tight end from the Cleveland Browns, Dameon Njoku.
Okay.
Yeah, so anybody paying attention to last year, seen how well he did without Deshaun Watson, surely took note he was not as good with Deshaun Watson, who will be there starting again. For some reason, the Browns love him. Nobody else does.
James time.
Yeah, so any backup made him so much better. Of the 15 they started last year, every one of them made Njoku, gave him his breakout season. And for the biggest part of his career, he just hasn't been anything worthy of a top 10, 12, maybe even 15 tight end. He's always in the lower ranges. So I'm looking at last year as his ceiling / fluke. And I'm expecting him to be nowhere near his ADP right now.
Very good. So Deshaun Watson, solid nominee. Next up is Joseph Harlow.
Oh boy. So time to bring out the haterade, but I'm going to go with Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. This is one of those, if you follow me, you know I've always been a little lower on Burrow, but this is very much he's ranked 6 overall in the middle of the second tier above names like Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, and across various tiers. And one thing with Burrow, where there's a big question mark, which we'll get to in a little bit, but he's a pass-only quarterback. Over his career in 52 games, he has 605 rushing yards. So 12 rushing yards a game and 10 touchdowns. It's not going to do much for you. In today's league, you want your top 6, top 8 quarterback. If you want one of those, you're either going to need someone who's going to throw for 40 touchdowns or who's going to rush a lot. Burrow simply isn't doing that. And with various injuries, which again, we'll hit on in a little bit, that's not going to be part of his game much more. So that really just kills the ceiling for him. And Jamar Chase is there, who is an elite receiver, who's actually my dynasty wide receiver 1. largely because distinguishing him from a Justin Jefferson is he has Joe Burrow, who is a near elite quarterback. But for fantasy, T. Higgins is going to be gone next year in all likelihood, and regressed a lot last season, which I don't think he can really bounce back from, as we talked about in our wide receiver tier show when I made a ghastly comparison of him, which we'll keep away from for now. But Burrow has 2 seasons with over 30 touchdowns, which were great seasons for fantasy. A lot of those were hit or miss weeks, though, for him. Again, there's not a lot of rushing upside. And with names like Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, other quarterbacks have come into the league who can run now. Even a Drake May can run a lot. We see Caleb Williams has, 35 rushing touchdowns in his 3 seasons as a collegiate starter. I don't think he'll have 12 a year in the pros, but still, he'll have more than Joe Burrow will in all likelihood. Anthony Richardson, we know what he is. Then you have Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, those guys who are ranked ahead of him, but we're adding names who just have significantly higher ceilings than Joe Burrow. And now let's get to the injuries. He had multiple ACL injuries in his career now, including one at Ohio State, I believe. I might be wrong there. Then he has this wrist injury, which no quarterback or even a pitcher has ever dealt with. Well, it's only linemen who have dealt with this injury, and he's already missing time in training camp or pre-training camp to rest his arm. And he's someone who unlike Jordan Love or Justin Herbert, isn't someone who's just blessed with ungodly arm talent. So if he drops to even 90% of what his arm was, what is that going to do to him, especially since he doesn't have the rushing upside? Could he still be your quarterback 8 every year in and year out? Sure. But I don't see that top 6 upside anymore. And if that's where he's going in drafts, I don't want any part of that at that price.
I don't even know what to say to you right now.
There was a lot of hate there. I really think Joe is anti-AFC North.
If he was in tier 3, I would not be marking him as a bust. However, as a top 6, top 8 quarterback, I just don't see how you can justify it with the injuries.
I mean, to speak in your language, I believe you seem very Sith, right? They were filled with anger and hate. Right?
He's on the path to the dark side. You're right.
You are on the path to the dark side.
He's suffering.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe. Not suffering as much as Joe Burrow's wrist.
Wow. All right. Well, our last presenter with his nominee will be, Mr. Jameson.
Well, I'm going to try to follow that one. I'll try to be a little more positive, but we'll see about that. So I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs here. Just signed 4 years, $48 million with the Green Bay Packers, coming from the Las Vegas Raiders. If you know Matt LaFleur, the head coach, he has always ran his running backs by committee. I mean, even young Derrick Henry was getting outsnapped by Dion Lewis back in the Tennessee days. Last year, even though A.J. Dillon was one of the least efficient runners, he got plenty of run with Aaron Jones on, opposite of him. And then even though that Josh Jacobs is only 26, he has burned a lot of tread already on his tires. Over 200 attempts each year, the last 5 years that he's played in the NFL, including 2 years ago where he had over 340 attempts, which obviously that was his big season. But the Raiders were in a much more positive team compared to what they were last year. And then just as far as him overall, he doesn't have a lot of passing down work. He's never scored a touchdown off a reception in his entire career in the NFL. And I just think for him to hit where his price is, he would either have to be the workhorse back, kind of like a Christian McCaffrey, or end up in the end zone just a ton. So, along with that, he was originally supposed to be the Thunder to Aaron Jones' Lightning, but Aaron Jones decided that enough was enough and it was time for a change. So he went across the street to Minnesota. And then Green Bay spent third-round capital on Marshawn Lloyd. And he went above guys like Bucky Irving, Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, Braylon Allen, a lot of Ray Davis, obviously JJ's favorite running back of all time. So just a lot of guys that he went ahead of there. So I think that he's going to have some run in this backfield too. And then along with that, I think Green Bay's offense overall is probably the most efficient as far as filling every need. I mean, they have wide receiver 1 through 5, running back 1 and 2. They have Jordan Love that's really good. And, I don't see a path to him being the workhorse back. I think Jordan Love's going to sling it this year. And even if, they try to run it through Josh Jacobs, I just don't see as much upside with him. I just think that there's too many mouths to feed. I think outside of Jordan Love, everybody else kind of cancels out. And I'm actually really in at Marshawn Lloyd on his price. So especially in Dynasty, I think if you can get anything out of Josh Jacobs, I think he'd be a sell right now. Just an older back. I know he's only 26, but I mean, he's a pretty old 26 as far as running backs go in the NFL. So just a guy that I don't see at his price having the upside compared to some of these other guys.
Well, one thing to throw in there, and I am the biggest Josh Jacobs fans out there, but that's especially for redraft, but the 4-year deal is very much a lie. It's a 1-year deal. So
that's how
Dynasty wise. Yeah. Dynasty wise, that definitely knocks him down, which is totally fair.
All right. Well, I hear what Joe is saying. I hear what all three of you said. So we had 3 nominees, David Njoku, Joe Burrow, and Josh Jacobs. David Njoku, you seem to be talking a lot more about Deshaun Watson than you were him. But I understand what you were saying. Joe clearly hates Mr. Burrow. And Jameson, I don't know. I think Josh Jacobs, especially this year, I don't see him being a bust with that offensive line being as good. So if I have to give this award, the Sidney Sweeney Award for biggest bust of the season will go to David Njoku. Oh, sorry.
Congrats to Sean.
We'll go to David Njoku.
There we go.
Our next award. Can you guys calm down? Thank you.
I was really excited.
The next award is the Ice Cube Award for sleepers so deep, so deep they put your ass to sleep. This award is for players ranked in tier 4 or lower that will surprise managers with their finish this year. Our first presenter with his nominee is Joe.
All right, so I am going to go quite deep on this one to the tight end position, where, as we've talked about, it's looking a little better than most years, but I'm going to go with the new tight end 1 for the Rams and Colby Parkinson, local guy who was brought over on a 3-year, $28 million, something like that, mid-20s $1 million contract early on in free agency. Tyler Higbee's there, but I feel like everyone forgets he tore his ACL in the divisional round of the playoffs or wild card round. So he's not going to play this year, most likely. And if he does, it's not going to be until late in the season. And there are some mixed opinions on how good of a player he actually is. Parkinson, he was known more as a blocker in Seattle, though that's not really what he did. He's a solid blocker, and he's a massive target, especially in the red zone area. I think he's going to be one of those guys who, he's not going to be a top 5, 6 tight end, but if you need a touchdown, I think he's going to be a great waiver wire streamer just for the touchdown upside. Matt Stafford's super aggressive. Most like Kyron Williams and co had 45 rushing touchdowns last year. That's going to regress. And I think Stafford's going to have a lot more than the few he did have, which was a low number despite how good he was last year. I think we're going to see a lot more. There's a massive target in the red zone. Could see a lot more touches for him.
All right. So Colby Parkinson is your nominee. Next up for the Ice Cube Award is Jameson.
So I'm going to go deep in the weeds. I'm going to go with Will Levis here. So I know that's not JJ's favorite person.
I am coming around.
I'm trying to ease up on the host, but I'm 0 for 2 so far, but we'll see. But he gets Brian Callahan coming from Cincinnati as his head coach. And then Brian brought his dad, Bill, one of the best offensive line coaches ever, to fix the offensive line. And I know Will Levis, he had the 4 touchdowns in his first game and then fell off the cliff. Just some stats as the reason why he got hit on 25% of his dropbacks last year and had the second highest QB pressure rate behind Justin Fields. So, I mean, it's pretty god-awful for him. The offensive line, I think, will be much improved. I think it'll be probably better than average. Just brought in Lloyd Cushenberry from Denver, who had the number 1 best pass block rate last year in Denver. Drafted J.C. Latham from Alabama to pair with All-Pro Peter Skoronski. So he was last year's first-round pick. And then they brought in Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley from Jacksonville to pair with DeAndre Hopkins, who I still think has a little bit left in the tank. As far as I know, it's an older receiving crew, but just think this would be much better than what they had last year, where they basically ran Derrick Henry 469 times into the ground like they always did just in years past. I think it's going to be a different approach. I think Brian Callahan's going to be very pass heavy. And I think Will Levis is a really aggressive quarterback. So as long as Brian Callahan can find the mix to kind of dial it back just a little bit, but at the same time he can push the ball, I think it will give this offense a good chance to succeed. And with the defense being a little less than it used to be, I think they can get some shootouts in the AFC South with Richardson, with Stroud, with Lawrence. And then it didn't show a whole lot last year, but he had some rushing ability at Kentucky. His big year in 2021, he had 9 rushing touchdowns and a little over 300 yards. So it's not much, but these quarterbacks, you just get a little bit from them. And I think with a better offensive line, that'll help with them. But I just don't think overall people are really looking at Will Levis as somebody to be excited about. Kind of maybe a tier above Bryce Young, to where just like he might be on my team, but if I can get rid of him, or a small package deal, I think he's a buy low right now. And if it doesn't hit, the Titans will just move on probably next year, try to throw another dart at a quarterback. But I do think that if anybody's set up for success in 2024, it's Will Levis. So I'm gonna try to take my shots on him, especially in Superflex. If you play those, I think he's a great buy low right now. And I really do think, probably a little bit of a hot take, I think he could get in the top 12 quarterbacks if everything hits right. I mean, I'm not going to say he's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy, but I do think a range of outcomes is top 12 for him. Just with Brian Callahan being paired with him, one of the better offensive minds. I mean, he made Jake Browning look good last year. So anybody know who Jake Browning was before last year? No. So, well, unless you're a college dude, but, so on and so forth. But I just really like it for him. I really like this setup for Will Levis, and I think he's got a really good chance to succeed this upcoming year.
All right, so Jameson's nominee is Will Levis. That leads us to DeBrickashaw. Who do you have for us?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with Packers wide receiver Christian Watson. Had a really solid first year as a rookie. It's been injuries that have been the problems, more specifically hamstring injuries. And there was a really nice article on ESPN, I believe, that was going into details about how much time and his own money he's putting in to research the issues. Basically, he's got one leg stronger than the other, and it's a muscle imbalance. So he's really putting in the effort to get that more even. So theoretically, if the muscle strength is even, one leg won't be strained more than the other, and he won't be having those soft tissue injuries. That's the theory, and that's the hope. I thought he looked really good. I thought his chemistry was there with Jordan Love. I do think the Packers will be slinging a lot more, like Jameson said. And if anything, there might be too many mouths to feed there. Dobbs, Wicks, Reed. We hadn't even mentioned any tight ends. Then all the running backs. So we're looking at a lot there. But with his deep speed, and he's a threat to take some long shots there. I do think that'll help propel him to be the Packers' number 1 receiver this year. And this dude's going for near nothing. He's almost going undrafted in some of the mocks I've been in recently. He's a complete afterthought. So, yeah, when your stock is that low, it doesn't take much to outplay that.
All right. So Sean nominates Christian Watson. All right. So go over these again. We have Colby Parkinson from Joe, Will Levis from Jameson, and then Christian Watson. I too think Christian Watson's going to be much better this year, but I'm very wary of counting on him again. I have to see his hamstrings fire once without shredding themselves. Colby Parkinson is a very deep sleeper, almost too deep. And I know this award is called the so deep sleeper, but I have to go with Will Levis. I know I came off pretty strong against Will Levis. I'm kind of turning around my opinion on him. I think he might surprise some people this year. So the award for the Ice Cube Award for Sleeper So Deep goes to Mr. Will Levis. Now, there is nothing better than a live draft. So get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep.
So deep.
Thank you, Sean. So deep, you couldn't possibly need them all. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has IDP and expansion packs for all of us defensive degenerates. No more scribbling names on blank stickers. So go to Trophy Smack right now and get the only draft board that meets all of your needs. Check out the link in the show notes and get yours today. All right, gentlemen, 2 awards left. Our next award is the Denny Green Award for They Are Who We Thought They Were. Now, this award is going to players who are going to be exactly who we thought they were. If you think a first-round pick is going to, why wouldn't they be a first-round pick? That is your choice. If you think somebody who suck is going to suck, that is your award as well. So our first nominee is Jameson. Who do you have for us?
I've got Dallas Goedert for us tonight. So currently tight end 13 in rankings. He's going to be sitting behind A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You got the tush push from Jalen Hurts, and they just added Saquon Barkley. So the competition there is just, hard enough as it is. Don't think Jalen Hurts has really attacked the middle of the field a whole lot during his NFL career. It seems like he has been kind of protected and held back just because of the way he, plays basically. But Dallas Goedert has never had more than 5 touchdowns in the regular season of his career. And that was in 2019 when he hit 5. And he's never had more than 60 receptions in a year either. I think, for example, Trey McBride had like 80. And I mean, he did that basically in a second half last year with Kyler Murray. So my thing with him being just a guy, he just always ends up in this mid-range when everybody tells you like, oh, if you missed out on Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, just get Dallas Goedert in that middle range and he'll be fine. I can't get into it. He's around guys like Evan Ingram, who's a target hog, basically. Jake Ferguson, the second option in Dallas. David Njoku, who I know we don't totally love here, but I would rather have those guys than Dallas Goedert. I don't think he has any. He lacks upside. He's not sexy. He doesn't really tickle my fancy. So Dallas Goedert is just a guy for me.
All right. I'm glad he doesn't tickle your fancy. Don't even want to know where your fancy feasts. Next up for their nominee is Sean.
I'm not over here being tickled either. If anybody wants to know, I am going to keep the camera up here just in case. Yeah. So my Denny Green nominee is Mr. Kirk Cousins. This dude's always a quarterback too. That's where he's drafted. He's usually finishes on that higher end of it, but he's going to give you 4,200 yards, 25 to 30 touchdowns, half a dozen to a dozen interceptions. There's not a whole lot of highs. There's not too many lows. So he's pretty vanilla. He's not going to get you the rushing yards. Super flex. He's a fantastic QB2 because you are going to take all the running guys, and there's so many guys that can run now. That he's getting pushed further down the list. So I don't see how he's not going to be exactly who we think he is, even on a new team. We've seen him go from Washington to Minnesota, and pretty much the numbers stayed the same once he was the starting quarterback. Even the win-loss percentage, I think, is about even. He's like a slightly better Eli Manning. It's about as vanilla as you can get.
I don't know if any more vicious insult has ever been levied. That's pretty rough there, Sean. All right. So we have Kirk Cousins for our last nominee. We go to Joe.
I'm going to go to Foxborough and go with a tier 4 running back, 18 overall, and Rhamondre Stevenson. I think this is perfect. He seems like your mid-tier RB2 for the next while. Last year was rough for him, finishing at RB. Yeah, I just closed that tab. 36 last year. Zeke Elliott was there, and Rhamondre was hurt the entire year. So ceded a lot of snaps to Zeke and then missed a few games. Looking at 2022, he was running back 11. And huge part of the last 2 seasons is he has over 117 receptions over the last 2 years. It's something I see keeping up. Just he's a really good pass protection back. Antonio Gibson's there, who is more of a receiver than anything, but maybe I'm just scarred, but I don't see him getting the chance really, especially on his 3-year, which is really a 1-year contract. I feel like he's really just going to be a kick returner and not get trusted to carry the ball much more than a spell back. Rhamondre just signed a 4-year deal for $36 million. I think top 8 paid running back. And this one, their first out isn't until after 2027. So this is, unlike the Josh Jacobs deal, this is a legit deal to keep him there. And they're going to use him. He's not an absurd athlete, doesn't have the breakaway speed. He's not going to get 1,500 rushing yards in a year, but I think he can really get you that 1,100 yards, 50 catches, 10 total touchdowns. It's just super solid. The Patriots' offensive line isn't great, but it's not terrible. It's not as terrible as it seems. They're going to pound the rock a lot. Jacoby Brissett's more of a play action guy. He thrived in that Kevin Stefanski scheme, which was a lot of play action. And now Alex Van Pelt, Stefanski's former offensive coordinator, is the OC in New England. Jacoby Brissett's there. If Drake May comes over, they're going to need to lean on the running game a lot. And again, he doesn't have massive upside, so I feel like running back 18, perfect.
Wow, that's a good nominee. That's a very good presentation.
Thank you.
Class. That's an exemplar, by the way. So we had Dallas Goedert nominated by Jameson. We had Kirk Cousins, Mr. Cole's Cash himself, nominated by Sean. And then Rhamondre Stevenson by Joe.
If I had any of these guys, all of these guys as their position 2, I would be so thrilled.
Well, that's the part of fantasy football that I love. My favorite part of fantasy football is drafting the guys who are just going to do what you think they're going to do. And I think we often look for upside and we take these risks on players when, listen, you got the old standby sitting right by your side, right? Like, why are you going to say no to Kirk Cousins?
Well, people get so caught up on the next sleeper. Who is the next sleeper that they end up overdrafting the sleeper now? And so the vanilla guy who was going to be, right where you wanted him, now he's fallen. Now he's almost the new sleeper. We gotta quit falling in love with labels and just quit overthinking.
Yeah, like in my Scott Fishbowl draft right now, Kirk Cousins and Rhamondre Stevenson. I got Mondre, went 75 and 76 overall. Dallas Goedert has not gone in the first 90 picks. It's like
interesting.
Yeah.
Especially in tight end premium.
Yeah.
So
flex,
yeah, especially with all the flex positions. I am going to give this year's Denny Green, they are who we thought they were award. I always have to yell that, sorry.
And we let him
Rhamondre Stevenson. It's Rhamondre. Yeah, come up, Rhamondre. You're good. So the reason I give it to Rhamondre Stevenson is everything that Joe said. I think he's just going to perform like we think he's going to perform. That offensive line isn't going to be good enough for him to excel, but the team should be in it enough that he's going to get the ball and touches. And I don't think Antonio Gibson's going to take away too much work. So, Denny Green Award goes to Rhamondre Stevenson. All right, now our last award is the Sam Elliott Tom Selleck Award for Best Stash. This award is for players who you will want to keep on your dynasty rosters. Maybe not for this year, but definitely for next year. First up to present their nominee for Best Stash is Sean.
All right. For the best stash, I'm going with Houston Texans running back Dameon Pierce. Another guy that had a pretty good debut as a rookie, nearly 1,000 yards rushing. I think he had about 1,100 combined receiving and rushing. And then last year, new coaching staff, new scheme. Looking at some of the interviews that he was, doing during last offseason, this dude spit out so many ideas and basically was lost in his own head. Like he was overthinking everything. And I think that come across in some of the actual footage. You could see him not being very clear, not being very fluid, I guess, for the position. And now this year, everything I've read, heard, they're saying the complete opposite. That he's cleared his mind. He's trusting his instincts more. He's more fluid. He's more comfortable. He's not overthinking everything. He pretty much is the backup to, I believe, Joe Mixon now. Joe Mixon has a little bit of durability issues. He's getting older. If nothing else, Pierce will be a change of pace. Should injury occur or anything like that, even in coming years, I see Pierce getting right back to where he was, showing that promise from his rookie season. The offensive line has gotten better, healthier again. I'm expecting, maybe not this year, maybe later this year, for him to blow up. Once he gets that chance again, I think he will take it and run with it.
All right. I was mostly able to understand you, Sean. You said blah, 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 Dameon Pierce, something.
Yes.
He's going to be much better, clear of head. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your nominee. Next up is Joe. Who do you have for us?
I am going with the Seahawks, Jaxon Smith-Njigba.
Oh,
this was a tough category overall for me, just debating, do we go? And so I wanted to stick with a younger guy and receiver here. A lot of names there, but I feel like Smith-Njigba really went under the radar after he started slow to the season. There were some interesting words not said about Shane Waldron before the draft this year. You guys remember hearing that clip from Bears media? But towards the end of the season, he did start coming on. His reception perception profile is really good. The places he struggled the most are 9-route, corner route, and the slant. Or those, you need to be an overwhelming athlete, which he's not. That's not his game. The big thing here is Tyler Lockett has started to regress a lot, unfortunately. But I think the JSN will really take over that wide receiver 2 role. The Ryan Grubb offense, now I am putting a lot of stock that it's just going to translate pretty well. And maybe that's just because I adore Geno Smith. But I'll accept the bias and just ignore it for now. That really does open a lot of work underneath and for the slot intermediate area. And Geno has zero fear throwing the ball over the middle of the field. And JSN is a very trustworthy receiver like that. I think he's someone who, there might be some growing pains in the first year of a new offense, but I think next in 2025, he's going to be the clear wide receiver 2. I think there is still a chance he could take over the wide receiver 1 role. Maybe not in 25, but in 2026 and beyond, I think it's possible. He's someone who, in the 5th tier of wide receivers, outside of the top 25 wide receivers, I'm willing to pick up now. I think he's going super late in dynasty drafts. I think I got him in the 10th round of a startup this year, something like that. And it's for first round pick last year, I will gladly take that. And it might not be great production this year, but I do think it will be better than last year for sure. And really think he could still come on a lot in the future.
All right. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba from you. Our last nominee is Jameson. Jameson, who is your stash?
Feels weird because this is an older wide receiver, and I just think he's going super overlooked right now, but it's Diontae Johnson. And I know that comes weird as a stash, but just seeing where he is ranked as far as dynasty wide receivers, I mean, he's down with Josh Downs, just a lot of guys who I would rather have above him.
Wide receiver 41.
Yeah, so Jameson Williams in the same tier. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So, but I think Diontae Johnson is probably one of the most underrated route runners in the league. And I mean, he's done all his production with the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger and then Kenny Pickett. So 2 really bad quarterbacks, and the Steelers offense that, was ran by Matt Canada, who's up there with Nathaniel Hackett as one of the worst offensive coordinators of all time. So I'm going to keep pretty bad. And I just think that, as far as he goes, he also had the worst catchable target rate last year of any wide receiver in the league. He gets a new start here in Carolina, and I think there's some optimism if you can just kind of erase last year. First year for Trevor Lawrence, with Urban Meyer was terrible. People were able to erase that. Bryce Young is a number 1 overall pick. I think he'll get better in Carolina. He'll be the primary X there. and he doesn't have a lot of target competition. I know Xavier will get one of my favorites is there, but outside of that, it's Adam Thielen and Jonathan Brooks coming off an ACL injury and Chuba Hubbard, and that's about it. I mean, there's just Jonathan Mingo. I don't think it's going to happen. Got rid of DJ Chark, so I just think it really sets up well. Offensive line's improved. They brought some people over. Dave Canales, who basically brought Baker Mayfield last year from the dead in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans had one of his best years ever. I just think that he can do this stuff with Bryce Young too, and he'll end up being the number one target and the first look for Bryce Young. A lot of short, intermediate stuff. That's where he cooks. So I really think that Diontae Johnson will command targets. He's going to be a target hog. And then I can see him as a really high-end wide receiver too this year if it shakes out for Carolina. And I just think that right now you can take advantage of the Panthers' overall image. You can get Diontae Johnson really cheap, even though he's an older player. He's only 28, but I think people just have the stigma. I think he just hasn't been set up for success in Pittsburgh his entire career and kind of gets a new start. So he's somebody that I've targeted. And he goes in that Cortland Sutton range where I just think these guys get overlooked as wide receiver ones in their offenses.
All right. So Diontae Johnson from Carolina is Jameson's nominee. So just to rehash the nominees for the Sam Elliott, Tom Selleck Award for Best Stash, we have Dameon Pierce. I don't know if he's a great scheme fit down there. I don't know if he's going to have to leave or they're going to have to do something else. We talked about a little bit last night. I hope he does have his head a little more centered. Hopefully everything is a little clearer. Maybe he figured it out. Not too sure about him. As far as the other two, I took both of those gentlemen in a startup I am currently in. Jaxon Smith-Njigba was drafted by me, and 6'3", I took him, and Diontae Johnson I grabbed at 9'10" overall. So
that should be flipped.
Oh, it doesn't matter because I got them both anyway.
Great value for you, but I just kind of pushing my point there. But anyways, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay. But my point is, in a startup, I was going for JSN first because although this year might not be good for him, I think the future is going to be a lot brighter. And I think this is going to be the transition year there. Diontae Johnson, I think, is going to have a great year this year. I'm high on him right now. But I don't know how many years he has left. That's why I took him a little bit later, Jameson. Because this startup, because you have to know your competition. I'm listening to Drew Davenport, his latest auction brief, right? You got to be aware. You got to watch the room. And they're going rookie. Like the younger you are, the earlier you're going. And all this talent is dropping. So now it's just like picking those Diontae Johnson gems. And I did notice that over the first three awards, each of you won one award. So winning the Sam Elliott Tom Selleck Award for Best Stash is JSN by Joe. Our overall winner for the night is Joe. Congratulations.
I'm honored. Thank you.
I was really hoping there'd be more people in the audience. That's not a lot clapping. Maybe next year we'll get a little bit. Sean, if you could never make that noise again. It sounded like you were tickling your fancy, young man.
Well, the camera didn't really show everything, did it?
We would need a special camera for that. All right, gentlemen, that's the end of the Roddies. It is time for tags where we share any final thoughts we may have and let everybody know where they can find us. Sean, besides your local jail, where will you be found?
This weekend, probably at the house. You can find
did you have all your fingers after July 4th?
I lost nothing, dude. I'm experienced. I'm not some JPP rookie out there. Don't hold fireworks in your hands, and they won't blow up in your hands. That's the biggest advice I can give you.
It's pretty good advice.
Yeah,
seems logical.
Yeah, right. Eliminate the problem, and there is no problem. Yeah, so on the X at Sean8386, you can find me there. Just getting back into writing for IDP Plus / still IDP guys. So we should be having something coming out soon. So.
Any hint as to what it is, or is it just going to be a mystery?
I don't remember anything, sir. Defensive tackle tiers, I believe is what I did. Stole Joe Harlow's layout. Everything. All I did was change some of the names. Used all of his words.
Well, next
very
up,
similar layout to the show.
Next up is Joe.
Yes, you can find me on the Twitterverse at JoeLow63. Also starting to get back into writing for Redraft Stutch. I had safeties and edge rushers come out this week, I believe, and wide receivers next week for similar tier exercise as what Sean was alluding to.
Are you going to make more people angry like you did with your edge article?
I mean,
I hope so. I really hope so.
I'm not trying to be mean or spicy. It's just trying to say what I think.
Listen, be your authentic self, Joe. That's all we can ask. That's all we can ask. Last up is Jameson, my friend.
I'm on the Twitter machine at Jameson Rules. I ain't got nothing going on outside of schoolwork. I'm trying to finish college. If anybody wants help, please give me a call. But other than that, I ain't got nothing going on until that gets done. So that's it.
All right. Well, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Oh, didn't point. Sorry. There you go. Thank you to everybody who joined us on the stream tonight. I appreciate you all. Thank you to Sean for joining us as always. You're the bestest of all guests. We appreciate you. Thank you to Joe and Jameson for all of their work and the whole crew at IDP Plus for producing the pod. Next Wednesday, make sure you're tuning into the All Out Blitz with me and Doug Orth as we welcome the godfather of IDP, Gary Davenport, onto the show. Then come back on Friday for the Rod Pod, where we dive into Super Scott Fishbowl rosters, ADP with Rachel. Yeah, that's right. Tootsie Pop is coming on. I'm pretty excited for that.
Nice.
So from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and as always, my friends, boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.